It's a Sunday morning. Early. Earlier than you'd like, because you don't really get to sleep in anymore. Not in the way that counts. The house is quiet, and that quiet is yours for exactly as long as it takes for the first phone to buzz. And it does buzz. It always does. Mom needs you to call the pharmacy. They got the prescription wrong again. Your kid needs the permission slip signed, and also $40, and also a ride at 2. Your brother, the one everybody says is going through a lot right now, left a voicemail at 11 p.m. that you haven't listened to yet, because you already know what it's going to ask of you. And here's the thing. You get up, you make the coffee. You start handling it, because that's who you are. At least, that's what everyone calls it, who you are. Your personality. Oh, she's just the responsible one. He's the rock. I don't know what this family would do without you. I want to tell you something this morning that nobody told you for about 40 years. That's not your personality. That's a job you were handed when you were 9 years old, in an empty house, and nobody ever told you the shift was over. You thought you were the only one carrying it like this. You were never the only one. So that's what this is. A headcount. The one nobody ever bothered to take. Us, finally, comparing notes on the thing we all did alone. Let's go back. Because all of this started somewhere, and it started earlier than you remember. You remember the key. We all remember the key. Around your neck, on a shoelace, or in the side pocket of the backpack, or under the mat where every kid on the block hid theirs in the exact same spot, thinking it was a secret. The U.S. Census Bureau actually started formally measuring us in 1984, kids coming home to no adult, letting ourselves in, running the place until somebody got off work. There were millions of us. Doing it at the same time, in the same after-school light, in houses 3 streets apart, each of us thinking we were the only kid in the world holding a key. But here's where it splits. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about. For a lot of us, the key didn't just open an empty house. It came with a person. A smaller one, a little brother who needed a snack, a little sister who needed help with her homework and her bath and her bad dream at 7 p.m. before anyone got home. The stove you weren't supposed to touch, that you touched anyway, because somebody had to make the dinner. You weren't just home alone, you were in charge. And nobody sat you down and said, "This is a lot to put on a kid." There was no ceremony. There was just a Tuesday. And then another Tuesday, and somewhere in there you stopped being the kid in the house, and started being the one the house ran on. You don't remember signing up. That's because you didn't. You got drafted. And the draft never ended. For most of your life, you didn't have a word for this. You just had the feeling. The low hum of being responsible for outcomes that were never really yours to own. There's a word. I'm going to give it to you, and I want you to notice what it does in your chest when you hear it, because mine did something the first time too. The word is parentification. It's exactly what it sounds like. A child gets moved into a parent's role, managing the siblings, managing the logistics, sometimes managing a parent's own emotions, becoming the calm one, the fixer, the little adult, before they're anywhere near ready. And here's what the research actually says, because I'm not going to hand you a clean villain story. A review by Hooper and colleagues, and the work summarized out of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, found that the outcomes of this are what they call bimodal, two-sided. On one side, it's genuinely linked, later in life, to anxiety, to depression, to trouble trusting that anyone will catch you, to never quite knowing where you end and other people's needs to begin. But on the other side, and this is the part I need you to hear, it's also linked to real competence, real maturity. People who are calm in a crisis. People who can actually handle it. The strength is not a myth. You didn't imagine being good at this. You are good at this. That's the cruel little knot at the center of the whole thing. The exact same childhood that gave you the capability gave you the wound. They came in the same box. You can't fully separate the person everyone relies on from the kid who never got to just be a kid. So when they praised you, and they did praise you, here's what I think was actually happening. And I'll be honest that this part is me reading between the lines, not a number on a chart. You're so mature for your age. You're such a little adult. I don't know what I'd do without you. That sounds like love. It's almost impossible to tell it apart from love. And I think that's exactly why the cost of it stayed invisible for 40 years. Because how do you complain about the thing everyone thanked you for? How do you call it a wound when it looks, from the outside, like a compliment. You don't. So you didn't. None of us did. Let's talk about the two most honest, dishonest words in your whole vocabulary. I'm fine. You say it without thinking. Someone asks how you're holding up and the words are out of your mouth before the question even fully lands. I'm fine. All good. Yeah, busy but good. You've gotten so good at it, you say it to yourself. There's research on this. Shrivastava and colleagues looked at what happens when you habitually suppress the outward expression of what you're feeling. When I'm fine becomes the default setting. And what they found over time wasn't pretty. People who do this report lower well-being, less closeness, less social support. The very connection you'd need to feel less alone. Suppression quietly walks it out the back door. And of course you suppress. Of course you do. Think about the logic you grew up inside. If you'd fallen apart at 9, in that house, with that smaller person depending on you, who would have caught the both of you? Nobody. That was the answer. Nobody. So you learned the rule early, and you learned it deep. You are not allowed to be the one who's not okay. Your job is to be the floor other people stand on. Floors don't get to be tired. Floors don't get to fall through. So you said I'm fine, and you meant I have to be. And here's the part that breaks my heart a little. The part that makes this a head count and not a sad story about you. Right now, tonight, there are millions of us saying those same two words into the same kind of silence. Same lie, different kitchen. We are all telling the same lie at the same time, and each one of us thinks we're the only one faking it. You were never the only one. Here's what nobody warned you about. The role doesn't expire. It just changes who's standing in front of you. You were the kid taking care of the smaller kid. Then you were the teenager everybody came to with their problems. Then you were the young adult the family called first for the money, for the ride, for the funeral arrangements, for the hard phone call nobody else wanted to make. And now? Now you've hit the part of the loop that has an actual name and a statistic attached to it. The sandwich generation. The National Alliance for Caregiving and AARP have been tracking this, and the numbers got heavier, not lighter. Tens of millions of family caregivers, and the count keeps climbing. Nearly a third of them are also raising a kid under 18 at the same time. Among the caregivers under 50, it's closer to half. Read that again. Half. Caring for a parent who's failing and a child who's growing. At the same time, in the same week, out of the same finite tank of energy, you're holding your mother's hospital discharge paperwork in one hand, and your kid's college forms in the other, and there's a cup of coffee on the table between them that you poured an hour ago and never got to drink because somebody needed something before it cooled. This is the loop. The little person you took care of at 9 became a whole life of little people and big people, and everyone in between. The key around your neck just got bigger. You're still letting yourself into the empty house. You're still in charge. You're just 50 now, and you still think you're the only one this is happening to? You are not. By your 40s, this is the statistical center of the experience. Pew found more than half of people your age are wedged between two generations at once. More than half. This isn't your special burden. This is the room you're standing in. You just can't see the other people in it because they're all in their own kitchens, holding their own paperwork, not drinking their own coffee. Everything costs something. Even the things you do for free, especially those. Being the dependable one has a price, and the cruelest part of the price is that nobody ever hands you the bill. There's no invoice. There's just a slow, quiet subtraction that you don't notice until a lot of you is already gone. The caregiving research puts actual numbers on it. People in this role report their own health getting worse. They report the savings that stopped, the retirement they stopped funding, the checkup they kept rescheduling because they were too busy taking everyone else to theirs. When was the last time you went to the doctor for yourself? Not for a kid. Not to drive a parent. For you. Take a second. If you had to actually think about it, that's the invoice, that blank space where the answer should be, and there's a second cost, a quieter one, and the research backs this up too. Studies on self-reliance, a lot of it focused on men, so I won't pretend it maps the same onto everyone, found that the stronger your belief in handling everything yourself, the less likely you are to ever ask for help. It directly predicts suffering in silence, and the APA data showed Gen X less likely than younger generations to have ever gone to therapy, 26%. The generation that needed it most was the least likely to walk in the door. Why? Because asking for help wasn't in the job description. You were the help. The help doesn't get help. The help just keeps showing up. Here's a thing I think about, and I'll flag this as my own read on it, rather than something in a study. The people who get the "are you okay?" check-ins are the people who look like they're struggling, the wobbly ones, the loud ones. And you've spent your whole life making sure you never look like that. You made stability your entire brand, so nobody worries about you. Nobody offers. Why would they? You've got it handled. You always have it handled. Which means the heaviest load gets quietly placed on the exact person least likely to be offered relief and least likely to take it if it were. Because you can carry it. You're the one who always has to. You built the reputation. And the reputation became the cage. You've solved everyone's emergencies for 40 years. When is the last time you let somebody solve one of yours? Now, I want to tell you something that should make you a little bit angry. The good kind. The kind you've earned. They called us slackers. Remember that? That was the brand they slapped on our whole generation. Apathetic. Disengaged. Whatever. The flannel and the eye roll and the "I don't care" of it all. The generation that supposedly couldn't be bothered. Let me put a number next to that label. In the APA's Stress in America data from 2012, and I'm dating that on purpose, because in later years that ranking shifts, and I'm not going to overstate it, Gen X reported some of the highest stress of any adult generation, not the lowest. Among the highest, the whatever generation was, by the actual data, white-knuckling it. Put that next to the sandwich load. Heaviest dual caregiving years. Stress at the top of the chart. A documented habit of absorbing the weight instead of handing it off. That's not a slacker. That's the opposite of a slacker. That's a generation that was overfunctioning so quietly that everyone mistook the silence for not caring. Whatever was never apathy. Whatever was a coping mechanism, it was what you said instead of "I am drowning and I don't have the language for it, and even if I did, who exactly would I hand it to?" We weren't checked out. We were maxed out, with the volume turned all the way down. We carried 2 generations up a hill, while the people watching called us lazy for not smiling on the way. You were never the slacker they said you were, and you were never the only one carrying it. So let's come back to that Sunday morning. The quiet one. The coffee you poured and didn't drink. For your whole life, that morning felt like a solo act. Like you specifically got handed a weight, and you specifically had to be strong enough, and if you ever set it down, it would prove something bad about you. That's the real wound here. It was never just the carrying. Plenty of people carry things. The wound is that you did. It convinced you were the only one. Each of us, in our own house, building our own private little raft of "I don't need anybody." Totally. Sure, we were the only one out there paddling, and the whole time there was an entire fleet of us, just out of sight of each other, all paddling the same dark water, all certain we were alone on it. You weren't building one raft. We were a fleet that never once looked up to see each other. That's what this was. A headcount, the one that never got taken, because the kind of people who become the responsible one are exactly the kind of people who'd never raise their hand and say, "Me too. I'm tired. I've been tired since I was 9. So I'll raise mine first. Me too." The key, the smaller kid, the stove, the "I'm fine," the undrunk coffee, all of it. Me too. And the room you thought was empty, look up. It was never empty. It was full of us the whole time. Just a different kitchen. Just a different Sunday. Same exact morning. You were never the only one. You were never the only one. You were one of millions, and nobody ever told us. So I'm telling you now. So here's the head count. For real. I want it in the comments. Tell me, in your family, were you the responsible one? And how old were you when the job started? When you first remember being the one who handled it? Put the age. Just the number if that's all you've got. 9, 7, 11. I want to see them stack up, because I think a lot of us are about to find out the number was way, way too low, and that we are standing in a much bigger room than we ever believed. I'm taking a head count. Tell me where you were standing. We're finally comparing notes.